It's just fun to do that. I apologize. It's obnoxious as I'll get out.
But it works.
It does. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Kari. Rob, officer. Nick, are we ready to go? Are we on? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We are on. That means I need to pull out the agenda really quickly, because I didn't do my prep work. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Nancy. It is Monday, February 5th, and it's approximately 7 o'clock. It's a little later. And we are in the boardroom in Hanover. And our agenda today is, thank you, Nancy. I finally got one. Is fairly straightforward. Famous last words. And we're going to move straight. Is there public comment? No. Then we're going to move straight down to business requiring discussion. Item number 6. And the first thing here is the West Wheelock / TIF district presentation. Is that
It's
Rob?
never seen a meeting.
Rob, did you expect to be up that early?
I would have been set up.
He's 20.
Today?
So he's 26 or something.
6.
Yeah.
Is this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm not good with 26.
Rob, take it away, please.
Hello.
Thank you. Good evening. Rob Hausman, Director of Planning, Zoning, and Codes. Wanted to do 2 things tonight, give a broad overview of tax increment financing in New Hampshire, and then talk about a potential tax increment finance proposal for the West Wheelock corridor. And I would start with any conversation that we have about West Wheelock should be prefaced with the town had a charrette back in 2013, 2014 that promulgated a zoning amendment, which unfortunately failed. Then was petitioned in 2020, and it resurrected this discussion. So with that as the framework, let's move forward. What is a TIF? It's an economic development tool to capture a potential increase in taxes to make public improvements. And it uses new taxes created, new increased, the result of increased assessed value for new construction expansion of public facilities based on improvements in the district. And it's used quite frequently in the state of New Hampshire. Oops, what did I just do? I won't use the mouse. So the fundamental concepts of a TIF are as follows. First, the property tax revenue is based on the original assessed value. So if we were to establish a TIF at the, let's take May town meeting, the benchmark would be the assessed value of May, would be the baseline. And any increase going forward would be the net difference that would go to pay debt service. There would be no change in that portion that goes to the general fund. It's the increase that would be collected for debt service on the improvements the town may wish to complete. And so we talk about how it's captured. The assessor would be the person who really sets that benchmark and then annually develops the increased assessed value. And it's used to pay off the debt service for the improvements in the TIF. So the TIF can be created several years in advance, revenues generated, a bond then floated so that you're not putting that bond burden on the taxpayers or the general fund. And then in theory, 100% of that debt service would be paid off through the increase in assessed value of the district. The ultimate goal here would be to pay it off quickly and to return the balance of that increase in assessed value to the general fund. I'm going backwards here. So what's requirement and what are the required elements and limitations? Each district must have a plan, and that plan must be adopted. You adopt the enabling legislation, you create the district, then you establish the oversight committee, they develop the plan, that plan then has design cost elements that will generate the bond debt service.
Could you just do those steps again?
Sure.
I think I got them.
Did I skip over them?
Oh, no, with the oversight committee and like how the plan gets formed.
Yeah, no, we'll jump into that. Let's see if I can, did I get it out of whack here? Okay. So there's some limitations. Let me just step through this. There's some limitations. The TIF district, no one TIF district can be more than 8% of the total assessed value of the town. Upon the formation of the TIF district, the assessor establishes the original assessed value, and the assessor calculates the annual amount that's assessed, the increase in value captured as part of this process. I'm not going to touch the mouse. The municipalities that do use tax increment finance districts in the state of New Hampshire, a whole host of municipalities running from our large cities, Nashua, Manchester, Concord, Keene, to our sister city to the south, Lebanon, Enfield, Plymouth. So it's a tool that's in our toolbox that we need authorization to use, and then we need to go through the process of creating the district itself, and speak to, don't touch the mouse.
Sorry, Rob.
Yeah?
We have one in Hanover also, right?
So I think the parking fund is not a true TIF, it's a,
I'm not sure if is it through that same RSA 670, yeah.
is
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
Oh, so we've already been enabled.
So we have a TIF.
So I've been
Add
looking,
Hanover to the list.
I've been looking for the enabling vote, but I haven't found it. So I'll go back. We attempted to cull our records to see if there was any authorization, and I didn't see it in the parking record, so my bad. I'll add it, I can add it.
Which RSA is it?
So that simply means we've been authorized. Now, if we wish to, we need to create the district, so that we'll talk about that in a second. So I use Enfield as an example. Enfield did the water and sewer improvement on Route 4. They established the TIF in the district in 09, or I believe it was 05. 09, they started the bond. The revenue stream increased it beyond expectations, and they were actually able to pay down the debt service much faster than they anticipated. Here's the breakout. Again, the adoption was 2005. It was amended in 09. That amendment established the project scope and cost, and then the authorization of bond. The original assessed value, 32 million, retained, captured assessed value, 12 million, current assessed value, 44 million, annual increase that was retained for TIF district bonding, $303,000. And then Keene, this project was pretty significant. Keene went through the process in 2000. It was identified an area where they could do public improvements, infrastructure improvements. They showed the assessed value of 12 million. They estimated a proposed project value of 8 million with an estimated revenue stream of 300,000 a year in new taxes. Today, that's increased to 21 million in total assessed value. And so with 824,000 additional tax revenue. So their debt service is not reliant on that full amount. They can either pay it down quicker or return it back to the general fund. As I mentioned at the onset, the West Wheelock Gateway TIF was part of the concept planning back in 2013, 2014, as we went through the exercise, as the town went through the exercise. The concept behind it was to look at increasing residential use near the downtown Hanover, within transit, on sidewalks, and sewer and water areas. You know, this is a pedestrian-oriented neighborhood. It's a linkage to Norwich, which has a high volume of pedestrian and bike traffic. It's on the Appalachian Trail, and it's also a high volume vehicular gateway to the campus and the downtown. It's also a linkage to our elementary school and middle school and other employment centers. The goal here with this rezoning is to increase residential units on West Wheelock. And it also allows for limited retail use as it relates to the neighborhood development. So a laundromat, some type of small retail venue for food services, or even a small restaurant. And it's designed to promote private and public investments and to enhance the aesthetic and function of the key gateway, improve the pedestrian and bicycle and motorist safety, and maintain the infrastructure needs to support safe use of this key gateway. What would the TIF funding be used for? New drainage systems to provide appropriate treatment before the stormwater discharges into the Connecticut River. This is a significant issue. As you can imagine, everything from the top of the hill down drains down that corridor. Part of the campus drains down that corridor, and the west end drains down this corridor. So it's a collector system that needs to be sized appropriately, and with these new episodic events that we're experiencing, these flashy storm events, we should be planning that into our design. And we should be thinking about Green Street design, how they capture that water, use it for irrigation, try to infiltrate it back in. New sidewalks, bike paths, and streetlights, burial of utilities, and adding street trees and improved landscaping and streetscape. The TIF district, roughly as I've conceived it, is one property deep along the corridor from the river to Main Street. So it's, you're looking at how we capture the revenue. That would be the area where we would fix that boundary. And the reason why I've drawn it this way is because that's where the improvements would occur. So in 2015, the charrette concluded with a plan. The corridor itself, this is an example of what it could look like at build-up. The green gateway. Imagine coming across the bridge and having this, the bike lanes, the sidewalks, the trees, this tree-lined street, and the other improvements that are shown. And again, this concept really tries to focus in on how it will look as this corridor gets redeveloped. I think we can all agree that a portion of this corridor, if not all the corridor, is somewhat tired, somewhat dated, and often it could use great enhancement. And this schematic was done as a build-out scenario of that zoning district. And it really tries to figure out the building massing and scale, but it also shows that there's a really big potential for reinvestment in this corridor. Oops.
So can you orient us? Where's the river?
Sure. So the top would be School Street.
I'm in the river.
We're standing on it.
Actually, Alex is in the river.
Yeah, Alex is in the river. So the bottom of the page is to the river.
Got it. Okay.
Thayer Drive is this little spur, which is now entrance to ECSC. I think I got that right. And West Street's the lower one.
Got it.
And so the previous illustration was sort of a subset around West Street?
This
That
one?
one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been West Street. So,
I mean, things have obviously changed
Yes.
since then.
yeah,
I mean,
things have changed.
well, and back when we were doing the work in 2013 to 2015, I mean, you were part of that car, weren't you? I don't know. Anyway, that drawing, the thinking at the time was, connect West Street straight across to Thayer so you could zip across, and the evolution of traffic engineering has changed, and so when ECSC permit was granted and that building was built, they decided to keep that intersection kind of off center, so you didn't have and put the lights in to manage the movements there. So I mean, so things have evolved in the 10 years since that work has been done, and we were, I mean, because I sat on that I was involved with that charrette, and all kinds of people were part of it, and it was volunteer, and we were shooting for the moon in terms of ideas. So I think that you would want to do something more current.
And that's the goal, is to seek authorization so we can develop the plan, so the select board can either choose to move forward or work on a more refined plan. We don't have that plan yet. I can say that we have one project that has received approval in this corridor. There's at least one more in the works that I expect the planning board to see in March for design review. And I believe there will be a significant number of additional applications within the next 3 to 5 years. So the opportunity to strike is before that development occurs, so we can capture the increase in tax value from the onset rather than after it's underway or after it's been developed, because then it's not really a capture. So the suggested warrant language would obviously be amended, because if we have already received authorization, we don't need to seek authorization, but it would be to authorize the establishment of the district and authorize the select board to appoint the advisory committee, delegate the administration. I place this responsibility on my department if you so chose, and to set the window for 15 years or less. And that would then start the process. Oops, come on, no.
You have to take that most away from you.
Yes, you do. Stop.
That's pretty.
So at the end of the day, the timelines, write the draft, Wheelock Gateway TIF district plan. It's a narrative, it's pretty straightforward, it's 3 to 5 pages, it's almost complete in some draft form. Compile the list of the assessed value of the properties captured in the district, so we know what the values are today, and we know that they're less than 8% of the underlying value of the town, total value of the town. It would be meet the Grafton County Commissioners and the Hanover School Districts before we go to public hearing. We have a duty to do that by statute. Hold a hearing on the warrant article on the Gateway District specifically. Hopefully town meeting adopts the Gateway TIF district, and then the select board appoints the advisory committee, delegates the responsibility to my department. Develop the district becomes the process that we would undertake a year or so in, it'd take 6 months to a year to do. Bring it back to the board, and hopefully then package it in such a way that we can seek financing, a bond, to make the improvements it desired. Totally paid for the net increase in assessed value created in the core.
It would require a town meeting vote, right?
That's it.
For the bond.
So we have 2 town meeting votes.
Yeah.
One authorize the Wheelock district, and the second authorize the project and the bond.
Do you anticipate that they would both be this year?
No,
No, okay.
we would need the plan, we would need to cost it out, and we would need to present it through a process.
I see.
So there's several checks along the way. There's no commitment to spend money with this. It's to try to capture that increase in assessed value and figure out what we can do to improve the corridor. And I would say that most of us who have been on that corridor would have experience of less than desirable experience, either biking, walking, or even driving.
So for the warrant article, what's needed is that 3 to 5 page narrative and
So we have to,
RSA authorization, possibly.
Well, it sounds like we may already have the
so we're
RSA.
gonna validate that
We
one way or
haven't
the
found
other.
it.
And it may, depending on what we find, we may want to just revalidate the vote. With that said, it's meet the school district, meet with the county commissioners, hold a hearing, the select board to hold a hearing no later than the 21st of April, I believe was the date, on the plan itself, and then move to town meeting to vote on the establishment.
So if it's Carrie and Kari have mentioned that we had this downtown parking district, if that has already been enabled, we've already established that through town meeting vote, do we, and I imagine this is a question for you or the town attorney, do we have to enable a specific geographic area in another vote?
Each district must be established by vote of the town.
Okay, so it's just one less step if we already have the authorization of 162K.
Correct.
I got it, thank you.
I was wondering if there was ever a consideration just along West Street. I know it's like 2 properties deep, but it seems to be kind of a part and parcel of the whole Wheelock district and not really like the rest of West Street further up. If there was ever consideration of maybe having a warrant article to add that to West Wheelock district.
So what I attempted to do, let's go back to that map.
So it kind of looked like it encompassed it a little bit, but maybe not all of it.
Get that out.
And it's technically a second property in, and it has a West Street address. So it's not in the main Wheelock district, I thought. But
It does include that other lot though, that little one, the little red house.
It does.
the red house and the garages.
Not the garages.
Yeah, so maybe like the red house and the garages, like that could be added maybe by a warrant article.
It would be a zoning amendment.
Zoning amendment?
It would be a zoning amendment
yeah.
because that's the boundary, that red line is the boundary of the district.
Yeah.
Is that immutable? Is that, I thought that was just something you had sketched out in your abundance.
No, the southern boundary, or the southern boundary of this district mirrors the West Wheelock zoning district,
Okay, thank you.
or the Main and Wheelock district is the technical term.
Right, I'm familiar with that from our work years past, but yeah,
So I think that's, yeah.
thank you.
We're seeing interest in this corridor. Our department, when I say we, we're meeting with prospective developers. Obviously, it isn't a project till it's approved and the shovel's in the ground, but we're expecting several projects to come forward fairly quickly, or at least one to come forward fairly quickly. And I think the time is right to try to capture this baseline.
Do you think we have adequate time to capture?
There won't be, understand that from the time a planning board approves a project and construction starts is typically 3 to 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it were approved tomorrow, we'd still get through town meeting and establish the district.
Okay, so once the district is established, that's when the base assessment is made?
Correct.
Is that true?
Or is it, or do you have to have the plan?
No, it is true.
Okay.
So even if you don't have,
The second step, which goes back to town meeting with the plan?
Correct.
Okay.
okay,
Once you establish the district, that's the baseline.
interesting. In terms of, can you go back to the map, please?
That one?
Yeah. So let's say we all discuss this and we think, okay, maybe this is worth pursuing. If this is the district, as you dive more deeply into getting us the parcels in the corridor, the assessed values of each of the parcels, and kind of understanding the geographic area better, is there the opportunity to change, like Jenny asked, extend it or diminish it, or think more carefully about the district, the geography of
The
the
gateway
space?
district isn't tied to zoning, so
Yep.
we with the right,
Prior to April 22nd.
yeah,
Okay.
we have the ability to create a plan that can support that boundary legitimately.
So this isn't tied to how we define, this is tied to however you draw the map now. basically.
I drew it to represent
Yeah.
where the improvement boundaries would end. That wouldn't make sense to stop to the west before Old Tuck Drive and not finish it to the river. And it doesn't make sense to stop at School Street and not finish the corridor to Main Street intersection. So if I can do this without moving anything. The district, the main Wheelock district stops at School Street. So there's a gap in that. But there are improvements that would be necessitated to have a continuous corridor for pedestrian and bike improvements. And you need to plan for your undergrounding of utilities. You should take them to the intersection and bring them down the corridor rather than drop them underground halfway down the hill.
Speaking of the intersection and the importance of designing through the intersection, was there any consideration to maybe include the intersection?
It depends on which project we're tying the intersection improvements to.
Yeah.
I believe the South Main project has a portion of the intersection improvements in it. The concept plan does. And the improvements around the green also have the improvements in it.
They do.
There may be an opportunity here.
There's not gonna be the big shift though,
There isn't.
right? In terms of your assessed value.
Big shift.
Oh no, it won't be
Coming.
it won't be the, in terms of the assessed value, only to the extent it potentially better connects all the residences in that district. In which case it would
So we can
impact it.
We can have that conversation.
Yeah.
Work through it with
Yeah.
the town manager and the public works director and see how best to approach it.
Yeah, there's other ways to do it. It's just,
There's some unique things that are going to be happening. I don't know if it's appropriate to share, but apparently Dartmouth has acquired Caskingon fairly recently.
yes.
I think that's public information.
Yeah, it is. So there's an example. That's the eastern terminus for all practical purposes.
What are the downsides to a TIF?
So one would argue that it's taking the net increase in assessed value away from the general fund.
Right.
I think it's an opportunity to take on a project of a significant scale that doesn't require general fund bonding. And can be timed in such a way that is specifically supported by the district itself. And given the math, this one in my mind is a real simple one to figure out.
Why wouldn't the advisory group be the capital improvement program committee? Establish that, right? So.
Select board can make that appointment. I mean, the challenge, I think, is do you have enough? Do you have too much work already to deal with the details? And you could be the oversight group or one of the elements of the process. It just, there'll be some nitty-gritty details to go through. Obviously, this is going to be diving into a full-blown design, stormwater, utilities, sidewalk, bike improvements, all of those things are going to be put into the pot and try to fit within the corridor. And then there's going to be some, I'll say, arm wrestling over how we prioritize it. You know, from my perspective, we need to turn the conversation on its head and focus on pedestrian, bike, transit, and single occupant vehicles. However, I know that our colleagues to the west in Norwich are going to be upset if we make any changes that cause traffic delay. The good news is VTrans, Vermont Transit, or the owner of that corridor, has upgraded their lights so that they can now be coordinated with ours and allow us to platoon traffic through, move large slugs of vehicles through at a time rather than have a trip here and then a trip here and then a trip here. So you prioritize it, so in the morning your eastbound traffic moves in a larger slug from 91 through the corridor, and in the PM peak you do the exact opposite, you flip it. And those are techniques in transportation planning that can deal with your peak hour demands without designing it for that solution. And prior to that, we were dealing with, old school pressure plate sensors. A car pulled up, the light tripped, whether there was one car there on the other street or not.
Rob, what do you need from the select board tonight?
Beyond great, thank you. Keep working on it. We look forward to seeing it.
Can you go back to the timeline slide, please?
So your timeline is public hearing before April 21st. That requires staff to get you, what did I just do again? I'm not sure why that kicked off.
Rod, just in addition to the light timing, I think it's important to point out that transportation demand management and mode shift has been like the only successful way to actually reduce congestion and vehicle miles traveled. And it has happened other places, and it can happen here.
Well, I think that's part of the TIF. I mean, I think
Yeah.
the real question is, do we want
shut it off.
the planning staff and Alex and his group to pursue this, or is it premature? And I guess my feeling is, I want to understand where we are right now. So basically, how many properties are in the corridor? What are their assessed value? Kind of get Norm to do some spreadsheet work so we know what we're talking about, and kind of have him working with the planning office say, okay, well, based on the zoning change and development potential, or that first 19 beds to 90 beds, Jolene's approval of that she got last year around this time, what is that increment? So we have an understanding of what we're talking about, and in terms of creating, what is that potential differential.
Sure.
So we have a sense of, is this a $1 million bond? Is this I know that a lot of work has to be done, but it would be nice to understand kind of scale for me.
So we've done some rough calculation. We've already created the spreadsheet to assess value. We've worked with the assessor to understand how he would assess the properties. He uses a multiplier of $120,000 per bedroom. So we can do the calculations pretty straightforward. And we've done some assumptions. So a 400 bed increase is $48 million in new assessed value. Then we can start to calculate what the baseline would be for debt service and what we can support. And I think within the next 2 to 3 months, we'll have a handle on potential other projects that are coming forward, or that are working on coming forward. And it's all coming to a head here with the opportunity to get in front of it and really fix the baseline assessed value of that corridor at its current value before newer projects get approved and developed, and run the risk of losing the net increase from those projects.
And just because I see a lot of potential improvement where those garages are, maybe those could be included in this TIF. And then if that gets rezoned, they could potentially be redeveloped.
There's not a lot of space for redevelopment there. Because there's like a drainage swale behind them, and you've got like 20 feet.
Yeah.
I kind of like the grunginess
Yeah,
of
cool.
that.
Yeah,
Sorry, I know
it
a lot of
reminds me
people don't. A lot of people don't, so.
I love those garages. I'll be quiet. So Rob, it sounds like you're hearing some support here. And just a second, Kari. Joanna has, raised some specific questions. Sounds like you've already addressed a bunch of them. Go ahead.
No, we'll get working on
Yeah.
the asks and get it to the board.
Yeah, great. And you said, I'm just looking at I'm on the calendar. Where are we? This is February. So
He's asking for
the one,
April.
and we have to hold that public meeting. The select board has to hold a public meeting by the 22nd or so.
21st
21st is a Sunday.
22nd of April.
Is it the 22nd?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It seems like we basically have 2 months. Is that adequate?
I think it's adequate for us.
Do you have to meet with the commissioners and school board prior to that or after that?
Before the public hearing.
Okay.
And we can do that. It's really to set the groundwork as to what may occur, if not. So it impacts the overall taxable land that would be otherwise included in the discussion, but I'm not sure there's going to be opposition to it. I can't imagine there is. We just have to meet with them. They don't have to.
You said that's part of the statute?
Yep.
Because they get what, 40% of, or no, 60%. What is the ratio?
Yeah, 60.
Yeah, closer to
60, 30, 10. So town is 30, county's 10%, and the 60% goes to the school district. So you're taking 60% of this potential tax increment from the school. So that's why you have to touch base, right?
Right.
Is that the rationale, right?
That makes sense. Would you be able to send those slides?
Yep.
Please, Rob. Kari, did you have a question?
Oh, Carrie did.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Kari.
Just, now that we have the CIP in place, we can assess impact fees and also development fees, or maybe that's the same thing. I'm not sure.
So I guess the comment is I'm not sure. We need to be careful that we don't do something called an exaction. So impact fees are the best way to do it. An ordinance has to be developed. We have to come up with a methodology for appropriate portioning out the cost for the improvements. And it's something that can be done. I've done it in other communities.
Please.
I've done specifically a school district impact fee on a parks and rec for facilities. And school districts, often when you have a debt service property, like a new school, you've built in future capacity, so that's the easiest way to calculate out that their proportionate share of improvements costs.
Kari?
And I'm old school here, handing out paper. This is Kari Asmus again, Chair of the Finance Committee. Because this first came out on Friday, I can't report out on an exact recent conversation about this from the Finance Committee. So I'm really reflecting on sort of like 20-plus year amalgam of different Finance Committee discussions that relate to debt, prioritization, transparency in budget planning, and related topics. My focus tonight would be one, on the process. In other words, what is the best way to rank and move capital projects like this forward? And two, how do we determine the best way to pay for any given project? Is the TIF district the best approach? Or are there drawbacks that might suggest another method would be better? In terms of process, when I saw this proposal in the packet, I reached out to the Finance Committee, a representative on the Capital Improvements Program Committee, and learned that this was not on CIP's radar. And to me, that's a shame because the CIPC is the one group that has the information about all the competing demands and is in the best position to prioritize and schedule revenue and expense streams, including the parsing out of bonding capacity. They're also in the best position to know of all the proposals, which one might be most appropriate for a public-private partnership with Dartmouth, when might impact fees or a special assessment district be appropriate. And I'm not suggesting that any of those things are better in this case. I'm just saying that that's something that certainly hasn't come to the Finance Committee, and as far as I know, it hasn't come to the CIPC either. As for the merits of the TIF, the Finance Committee did briefly discuss them last summer, which is how I think maybe Carrie knew about the parking TIF, because we discussed it. It passed, I believe it was in 1998. And so the last bond payment will be coming up in 28, 29. And at that time, then there's sort of this remaining $5 million captured net assessment that we'll see added to the town's net assessment. And basically, you know, that TIF has gone fine. We have not followed any of the requirements required by statute. We don't have a committee, we don't have an annual report, we don't do any of those things for our TIF. We just do it the way that Hanover does it. It has really served, though, as a subsidy for the parking fund. But again, it has worked very smoothly otherwise. I would say, though, the greatest takeaway from that conversation was the need to do more education about how exactly TIFs work. I have since tried explaining this comment, and I thank you for yours. I think that everybody kind of got it, but it is rather a difficult concept to grasp initially. You gave us there was one definition tonight about what a TIF is, and it was from the city of Dover, which is, a powerful economic development tool, and there's a lot of focus on business growth and new job creation. But of course, you can go to the web and get all sorts of information about TIFs, and there's one from a Land Policy Institute that just explains it as a tool that allows municipalities to earmark property tax revenues from increases in assessed values within a designated TIF district. And that's really pretty straightforward it is. And yes, I gave you one. And the Land Institute had, I think, a really nice little graphic that, we can all see that, and that's our main net assessed valuation of the town, the 2 whatever billion. The growth is what we are always bugging Norm about every year. What are we going to see in the growth in the net assessed valuation? In this case, B is then the TIF district base net assessed valuation, and the white box, the I, is called the increment, and that's what is going to be captured. And what's not shown here, but which Joanna alluded to, that little white box, 60% of it then is money that doesn't go to the school districts. 10% is money that we would otherwise use in an offset for our county payments, and then the town, the general fund and the fire fund would otherwise, have an additional, 30% of that, and that's what's forgone. I got under the wrong piece of paper here. So anyway, I'm on to the next page. And the next page. So anyway, I say that we would otherwise have that money because, of course, when you earmark or capture revenue in this way, it means by definition it can't be used on other things. Or in other words, there is an opportunity cost. And to mitigate that, you either need not to move forward on something else that you wanted to do, or you need to raise taxes that you otherwise would not have done. And that's what we've seen with the parking garage TIF. There's that $85,000, $90,000 every year that goes there. And if it wasn't going there, our tax rate would all be about 3 cents lower. So it's a fairly small TIF that I don't know that anybody has noticed. I guess a lot of people at Town Hall didn't know that we had it. But, you looked.
I think people notice that there's a parking fund and there's a subsidy, but it's hard to find the RSA where it was authorized.
Yeah,
Like,
well, it's,
and maybe it's in 89, and so.
98.
no,
98.
98,
Yeah.
just before we came
Yeah.
to town. So again, you have to end up raising taxes that you otherwise wouldn't have raised. And, because of that 30-10, 60 split, the impact falls most heavily on the schools, and that's why New Hampshire statute actually allows for revenue sharing with the schools. And because of some of the state,
Lack of funding?
or potentially
For
becoming
schools?
a donor town again, I think that they could be very sensitive to a loss of any revenue. And it would not surprise me if they would talk about revenue sharing. And that would be then something that you would want to build into the, into the model. And I have to say, as a former school board member of 9 years, and Nancy, I don't know how many years you attend, I have to say that I guess as much as I'm speaking as a finance committee chair, I'm also speaking as a former school board member and, one that saw budgets fail and teacher contracts fail and everything else. So I just, would like to say we should be very, I think, sensitive to their needs, given potentially what's coming down the pike for them. So, of course, in some instances, one might argue that the schools are not foregoing revenue but for this project, there would be no growth in the net assessed valuation. But as has been explained, very well tonight, because of the changes in zoning, the district is poised to see very robust growth in net assessment or net valuation, whether or not we do this project. So you can't really argue that they're not foregoing something. They are foregoing something.
Well, I think you could argue that it would be even better and more valuable if it has some of the other things done. Because if we just redid things the same way, it would be a certain amount of captured value and not more. And if we redid things to make it a gateway and walkable and bikeable and a place where people want to live, it would have more value. I guess it depends on how it's assessed.
It seems like people want to live there anyway, and we saw that the prices of condominiums in that area between the 20 and 21 town valuations grew, many of them by much more. So valuation grew by 15% overall, residential by 17%. Many of the condominiums down there were like 16 up to 30%. So it already seems like there is a lot of demand, and maybe there would be even more, but there's already a lot of demand there.
Yeah, I'm definitely not disputing that there's a lot of demand, particularly for multifamily housing in our town that doesn't
Even
exist
for small
right now.
condominiums.
Yeah, I agree that there's a lot of demand. I do think we can make it relatively more attractive than other multifamily by making it a place and really emphasizing the walkability and bikeability. And I think that will show up in the value because it does pretty much everywhere else. Because as much as multifamily is in demand, walkable places are also like just kind of at an insane premium.
I don't think the argument is, I don't think Kari is making that argument. I think she's just saying, how do you fund it? And she's, is what I'm hearing,
and what are
right?
the impacts of the school and what maybe is fair to them. And so I would just say though, in summary, that, well, I'm not quite ready for the summary. I was just going to say there's one other thing. As for the loss of revenue from the general fund, so we just talked about the schools. One might argue that it's a relatively small size district that would make any loss inconsequential. I just want to remind everyone that our current budgetary goal is to claw back the unhealthy use of undesignated fund balance. and by foregoing any incremental increase in the town's net assessed valuation, we are making that road all the more steep. So we have a real need already for the goals that we set out to take advantage of growth in net assessed valuation. Again, I guess I don't know that the CIP would prioritize unhealthy usage of fund balance with, a project, but it's something that you all need to think about, because that's, at your last meeting, you all said, yes, that is something we need to work at, clawing that back. And those two things are definitely at loggerheads, so you need to be aware of that. So in summary, creating a TIF district would result in less flexibility in how to use new tax dollars, and most likely primarily succeed in shifting taxpayer spending, as we say in the school district, from one pocket to another. It doesn't matter if the money is coming out of this pocket for the Hanover district or this one for Dresden. It's the same pocket. And so maybe we're not taking money out of our pockets to pay for the bond, but we're having to raise more taxes otherwise for other things because we don't have that. So it doesn't really help the taxpayer. I also just wanted to make sure, and this is on the back side of your handout, there were some other considerations. Has the town talked to the property owners about the possibility of needing to bear additional taxation should the district not raise enough incremental revenue to cover costs in any given year? That has happened in some places in the towns that we saw. Twice in the past 15 years, Hanover has seen a reduction in the overall net assessed valuation to the previous year. I don't know how that played out on West Wheelock. I mean, it's kind of neighborhood by neighborhood, but hiccups do occur, as I say. So that's something that it seems to me the property owners need to be aware of when deciding whether this is something that they want to support or not, and just transparency. And then also the administrative costs in terms of staffing time are known to be higher when implementing this type of project than some other value capturing options, like just regular land value tax. So the town would need to prepare a separate budget for the district, including its maintenance and operations, which we don't do with our current TIP. Provide an annual report, which we don't do. Staff a committee of 5 residents with at least one of them from the TIP district. So I don't know that it could be the CIPC that could do this work. And then by resolution, the select board needs to delineate the respective powers and so on and so on. Have a mechanism for appealing to the governing body, which is you, for a final decision when conflicts arise between the advisory board and the planning staff regarding the development program in its initial and subsequent stages. So although it's an advisory board, I think that in a lot of places when it's residents, they really want to take ownership and interesting, I mean, obviously so, and so on. But it's another layer that comes with the TIF district if you're doing it the way that you're supposed to. And then finally, any changes to the financing plan. So you're talking about adopting the district now, and then coming back with a bond. But anytime that the financing plan changes, that requires approval of town meeting. Whereas if you are, doing a regular bond, and sometimes these bonds are also more expensive because you're having to, you're promising future revenues that haven't materialized yet. I mean, I think a bank would say, oh yeah, we see this permit, looks pretty good. So maybe it wouldn't be the case here, but it's often the case that these interest rates for these bonds are higher. So again, it's just,
Kari, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Obviously, this is something that the board and the town in general need to be educated on, and we appreciate your efforts in that regard.
Well, I really think that it's important that we get the ducks in a row before the decision to take it to town meeting.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I kind of have maybe an observation, but, so, you know, companies all the time face, when they're doing investments, they face a choice. They can either commit their own capital, or they can do a lease, for instance, of a major capital item. And it's very common to do buy versus lease analysis. It's an analytical exercise, putting cost of capital. You can run the numbers and you can see which is the most advantageous. So it's not crazy to think about, this is one option to go down the TIF, but another would be to just commit the capital for the town.
Yep.
And we'll take the tax increase, and maybe if there's administrative costs, maybe we avoid those, but that's another option. But you kind of have to pencil out what you think the accreted value is going to be, how that's going to come in, and then you need to think about interest costs. If it's true that TIF costs are higher, then so that interest rate will matter. So I guess the question is, can you tease something like that out, Rob, together with Norm?
So we could, Ellen and I have sat and crunched the bond numbers. We can revisit them. I've been working on this since this fall, trying to move the discussion on it. I guess the issue really is we don't have a plan. It's hard to cost out what it's going to cost without a plan. I don't have the ability to create the plan without either the district created or a funding mechanism that allow me to start sketching out and designing a concept plan here. And there are a host of issues that need to be really vetted here. Everything in the ground, sewer, water, storm water, everything on the ground, and electricity, cable, fiber optics, whatever else we need to put under the ground needs to be figured out. We need to build it so that the sizing capacity of our utility company can be met for future growth. And all of those things really require us to establish either the district or a project scope that we would then fund internally out of pocket.
But what you could do is do the opposite. You could say, if you sort of sketch out what you think the potential appreciation will be of the investment of the buildings.
Yeah.
You've already talked about some of the numbers. You can then back into what is the potential budget that we would have for such a district. I mean, and you might have to then pare back some of the aspirations to load into this project, but then you can think about what the return might be. So I think you can do it that way.
Absolutely. I understand your recommendation, and we can crunch those numbers for you.
And then you could even earmark a return, not spend it all, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So I do have questions. At the November meeting, when we were here, a question came up about what role Dartmouth might ask to play potentially in improvements that would add to the viability, etc. Has that or any other thoughts on other funding come up or been pursued?
Well, in fact, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think if the question is, have we approached Dartmouth to ask them if they're willing to commit capital to the corridor? We meet with Dartmouth on a range of issues. I think Dartmouth regularly is tapped for funding above and beyond their proportional share of the improvements. And I would say that as any property owner, they look at it as proportionality.
What do you mean by that, Rob?
Their fair share.
Their fair share.
Yeah, got it.
And then the other question that I wasn't quite understanding, so you would establish the TIF district under this plan in May. And then you would not bond until the net assessed valuation had grown to an extent that it would allow bond payments, debt payments. So during that intervening year, 2 or 3 years, whatever it was, what happens exactly with, does the general fund continue to benefit from the growth in those years? Or how does that work?
I will get you that answer.
Okay, because my concern is that if it continues, the general fund continues to benefit those years, that is, it grows, and then the year when you say, okay, no, now we're going to take advantage of it to pay off debt, all of a sudden, if the town's net assessed valuation
Drops.
takes somewhat, that could have.
I'll verify the answer, but I'm pretty sure the baseline is once we establish the TIF district.
Yes, I agree that. So what happens in the intervening years before you issue a bond is what I'm asking about. I agree with your statement that it would be as.
Well, I will confirm how that money is handled, but my guess is that it's held in an encumbered account of some sort.
And I would like to see where the statute allows that.
Yep.
Because I don't think the statute does.
I will speak with.
Thank you. Thanks. Joanne?
I just hearing that from Kari that some towns have looked at revenue sharing with the schools. Is that something else you could look into just so we could understand what that would entail? That would be helpful just as part of having the full gamut of information in order to make this decision. That'd be great.
I forgot what I distracted now.
Yeah, sorry. Obviously, we, for this finance committee, did a bit of a deep dive on TIFs this past summer, and then I had no idea that there was the finance committee had no idea that there was any proposal that was likely to come forth. So the first any of us thought was on Friday.
Great. Thank you.
But have you thought now what you said you lost has it come back?
It has not.
All right. I think this has been a great discussion. Why don't we move on?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob, for staying.
So, next, we're down to 6B. We've only had one, item.
So just to close that loop, so our next series of meetings are really budget focused.
Yep.
But this is, if we want to pursue this, feels like there has to be.
We should bring back, yeah.
Needs to be. So
Alex,
just in terms of
Rob,
timing, could you?
Yeah, we're planning on having a business meeting at the beginning of the budget meeting.
Good.
So
Okay.
that might be the right venue for that. But then we also have the 11th or the 18th, hopefully one of which will be the budget, and hopefully one of which will not be.
Okay, just in
the-
terms of wrapping that discussion up.
Yeah, it'd be great if.
Because we have to
Rob-
plan that public hearing out if we.
It would be,
It feels
it'd be
like
great
there's
if
a
we
bunch
could
of
get
questions.
Yeah.
updates from Rob, sort of on a regular basis.
Okay.
Okay, looks like,
Thanks.
you're up, Alex, for a
6B?
FY25 budget and finance update.
Yeah, just a short update, just again, kind of keeping it on the agenda each meeting. So we just finished up, we have the actual final, totally done audit documents for the FY22 audit. So we'll be shortly posting the audit, the management response, the memo we wrote up for a couple meetings ago, and then just sort of a short cover sheet. Those will be posted online soon. And then Ellen and I really need to get through another maybe 2 weeks on the budget before we kind of do anything other than that. And then I think we're going to be coming back to select board, and we met and discussed the audit with the finance committee as well, and come back with a little bit more of a detailed kind of action plan for the corrective action for the audit. So that's one piece of it. Right now, basically what Ellen and I are just kind of doing most of the time right now is working on personnel related costs. So as all of you know, of course, we're meeting with our collective bargaining units and kind of trying to get across the finish line in the next couple of weeks, for the changes that are being proposed and discussed from the retention and recruitment study that have to do with any increases or changes to staff compensation for next year. So Ellen, Katie, myself, Mary, our consultant from UMass, that has kind of been where all of our time has been spent, meeting with department heads, meeting with unions, and just costing out different scenarios and kind of double checking things. And there's a lot of work to do there. So that I just wanted to sort of give a brief update of kind of where we're at, and we think we are still on track, though it is tight. But Ellen and I still, every time we get overwhelmed, we look at the calendar and look back to 1 year ago, and we're ahead of the game comparatively. So that helps ease the pain a little bit. But we think we're in pretty good shape, and over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be starting to wrap everything up, and our intention is to get everything out, hopefully. Our ideal goal is by the 16th. I'm going to guess our backup goal is going to be the one that it's going to happen on, which is the 20th, to get everything out to all of the select board and the finance committee before the budget presentations. So we're finalizing the schedule for each of the departments right now as well. Department heads come in for that, and the social service agencies and the capital portion, and a couple of the other pieces. So we're just kind of working on all of that right now. So that's really it, unless there's any questions.
Any questions, anybody?
In terms of working through the schedule, I know that it would help us if you want us to tag team the departments, or in terms of planning that week. I know it's 3 weeks away, like an eternity for you.
Yeah, right.
It would help us just to be thinking about that. So and that can be done obviously in an email, but it would be, like in the past, what we've done is we've, and I don't know, are you going to do it that way maybe?
Not 100%, but probably something like that, yeah. Like
so kind of, since there's, 10 departments, maybe, Nancy has DPW or water and sewer, and Athos has libraries and, I don't know, planning office, and we all take a department so we can do a deeper dive, because it's a lot of information to understand, and so we can have a personal touch and like reach out to John Sherman and say, hey, I'll introduce you when you come in to present your budget. What are the big issues that you feel you're facing this year? What are you really proud of? Or maybe there's 3 questions, but just to have a more personal, and we're getting into the nitty-gritty of numbers, but I think the way you've set it up, there'll be like, what are some of the highlights of this year from your department? And so then it's just a little more personal, and maybe in the next week or 2, as you guys work through the schedule, you could let us know and give us our assignments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely sounds good.
We've also found that it's helpful to be able to use John Sherman's as our example of if one of us is talking with John saying, well, this part of your budget isn't something that the select board has discussed very much. Can you make sure that that it's understandable, or the school board or the select board has talked about natural burials, and you don't seem to have mentioned it in the budget in terms of staff time to, whatever has been of interest to us. So we've really used these opportunities in addition to the personal touch to help, figure out where the question marks are.
Yeah, it sounds great. And I think, as far as all of your time, going deep down into every single department's budget is tough, and splitting things up, I think, is great, because it gets you in with the department heads a little bit more and really knowledgeable about certain areas. And I think we intend on doing something like that. We're just sort of figuring out, working on that a bit today. So we are a little behind there, but that seems to be the name of the game.
Is that good, Alex? Is that it?
Yep.
Any questions for Alex, other than we're just
Carrie?
Just one of the outcomes of finishing the fiscal year 22 audit is that we now have a bead on the June 2023 undesignated fund balance, which is at 3.5 million from 2.8.
Mm-hmm.
Could you repeat the numbers? I'm sorry.
3.5 million up from a prior 2.8.
And we're go ahead.
This is from Ellen's memo to the Finance Committee of January 25th, which is a good memo, which I sort of encouraged maybe her to send on, but I don't think you guys, it hasn't been circulated, right?
I think it was similar but more detailed to the select board.
There were a few numbers that went to the Finance Committee that didn't go to the Select Board, so that's why I was encouraging Ellen to send to the Select Board.
That'd be great.
That would be great.
Haven't seen
Yeah,
that.
that's 7,000.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, right.
$750,000. That's
Yes.
good news.
It's good news, yes.
Yes.
So.
Yes, we like the good news.
Yeah, you should share that more often.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Feel free to
Downplay
share
the
that
good news
liberally.
and-
We can all use it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Sunshine was
That was-
nice for the
There
past
was
few
champagne.
days.
Sun.
Yeah.
And we're gonna be updating. I know the sheets were complicated, but it seemed like we got thumbs up last year. Tracking the undesignated fund balances in a little bit more detail. Some of the prior was a little confusing, the starting and ending balances especially. And so even though our sheet had a lot of like cells in it, it did have a pretty detailed sort of pathway of the money. So we're gonna update all of those for the budget when we do the budget presentations as well, with slightly more favorable numbers than what we thought.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Now we're going to move on to business requiring action, and we just have the consent agenda, and there are 3 parts to it. There's the minutes. There's appointing Jenny to the renewing Jenny's appointment to the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission, and donations to the Adna Library. Did anyone have any issues, in particular with the? Do we need to pull the minutes out? Were there any discussion on that?
I just had a question. We were sending in, I thought, like the reports to be put in there. So I tried to put in the categories, like the categories, right, like the criteria for what was going in the CIPC, so people would know.
Oh, I
and
see.
It just said that, like, oh, it's just, we talked about it. But I mean, do we want it written differently, or should I read it, specifically out loud here, just what the process should be? Because that actually reflects the minutes, like the minutes are reflective of what happened, but I did read it out and then I sent it so that it could be in there, but.
So what you sent did not get incorporated into this, is that correct?
Yeah, but I thought we had talked about it previously, that we would just send in a written report that could be just attached.
Yes.
But if we're not doing that, that's fine, I just want to know what the process is.
No, that is the intended process. Okay. I think we don't want them to be too lengthy, but then the idea would be that you would say them verbatim.
Okay.
So here's my report.
Oh, but we said we could send them in after, so I thought that it wasn't necessarily verbatim. But we can change the process.
No, you could send it in afterwards. I think the feeling was no one was going to do that. So the idea will be you pre-write it. And here's my paragraph.
The first one.
Yeah.
And then send it in, and then it matches, right?
I haven't, unfortunately, I haven't had any
ideal,
meetings
because
since
it would be
then.
an accurate record. If it's from memory afterwards, it may not exactly correspond with what the minute taker has put together.
Yeah.
So, but the ideal process would be pre-write, yeah.
Excuse me.
But post-write is also fine.
I think
What do you think?
I think I did it. I just don't know what minutes they went into. Was it the last?
All right, well.
You sent it in and I didn't see I didn't see what you sent in, which I thought you had read, but I did see some of the comments you made. So I was just a little confused as to like how we were doing it, that's all.
It's possible they
And
get
I have a
incorporated into the
backup,
minutes. Is that
like,
what we're
I
saying?
don't have much time to write it up before, that's why I asked about writing it after.
Yeah, because
But
isn't
this
your
one I did
meeting
have
today?
time to write before, but I didn't. And I sent it after.
I think
And
can send
I
it
kind of read
afterwards.
pieces of it, I didn't read the whole thing verbatim. I just picked out the, so whatever, it's fine.
I think if you just want to send them in post, that's fine. Yeah. So you sent them to Carrie, us, after the meeting, or that's what you did?
I piggybacked off of Joanna's, but
Yeah.
I thought we were sending them to you for some reason, but I can look and see. Joanna, do you remember where you sent them? I could look.
I thought I sent them to Carrie, but.
Yeah.
I can check, I mean, it sounds like it may have not gotten moved into the minutes, maybe.
To carry Oscar. When you
Yeah,
say carry.
Carrie with
Yeah,
E.
yeah, right.
Carrie
okay.
with the E.
Yeah,
K-E.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
So I would.
But I can't find,
Okay, I'll ask, yeah, I can,
ask her.
Send it
because
to
maybe,
Carrie with a K and then copy Carrie with a C.
Okay.
Cool.
Great. So we're gonna leave it on the consent agenda.
Yep.
Okay, so, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I just want to read the library donations. Lots of donations this week, and it's just wonderful. Heather Emerson, $150. Heidi and Jerome Bonobo, $100. Thomas and Barbara Hall, $25. Mary and Bruce King, $100. Ellen and Daniel Lynch, $100. Matthew and Elizabeth Marshall, $500. Betty Barbara, $25. Shelley, I hope I pronounce this, Uford, $50. And the Quentin Fields McManamy Family Fund in memory of Petey Burney in the amount of $250. Yes, she passed away recently. Thank you for all these wonderful donations. It's remarkable community outpouring of support that seems to continue and continue. All right, where are we? Town manager report, Alex.
don't have much. I mean, the only thing was just a quick update. There were some questions about the bridge down on West Wheelock,
Yep.
and just that the staff looked at some materials, and I could put a little bit of a better update in for in my actual report for the next meeting. But basically, Public Works Director Pete's reached out to NHDOT, and we are in the process of trying to make sure no permanent things happen down there until we figure out what we want to do, meaning embedding the thermoplastic new lane markings. It sounds like the feeling is that DOT will need to see not necessarily a letter with a request in it from us, but some designed and engineered plans for West Wheelock, and that would allow them to say, okay, we'll change our designs if that needs to be done, based on actually, seeing, fully designed out plans they can sort of match up to. And we need to look into it a little bit more. This is going to be a little bit easier going forward because we are boosting a little bit of our sort of transportation related capacity by starting to work with the Regional Planning Commission in a little bit more detail. So I do think that we want to do some questions about the crosswalk down there and whether it's in the safest place. It's sort of a mid-block crossing right now.
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
That it's not at the intersection of Old Tuck Drive. And so the DOT put a crosswalk in a place where there's not a intersecting road.
I think they typically set them back about 10 feet, 10 to 20 feet, but.
That's not my understanding of it, but that typically.
Alex, can I interrupt you for
Sure.
a second? So, the letter that we voted on a few weeks ago, was not sent?
It was not sent unless
Because
Peter.
because we, the vote that we took was to send it if Peter, the Department of Public Works Director, did not have any objections to it. In fact, he did have objections to it in terms of both some of the technical and timing issues. And I don't have my notes in front of me, but it had to do with the type of, as a certified engineer in this regard, he had issues with its location, with also timing, period. And some of the non-technical issues had to do with interactions with the DOT. So it wasn't sent, and which isn't to say we're not acting on it, but that's where we are right now. Alex, can you update us on where we are?
Just that
Yeah.
Pete's reached out to DOT and made it known that we would like to have paint done in the short term.
Yeah.
We haven't heard back yet. It's not always the quickest of communication cycles. But you know, there's nothing happening for a while. There's no work happening for a while anyway. You know, Pete and Rob, we'd like some time to do a review of the intersection, sort of the way that we would normally do anything. We don't think that the DOT would give us the flashing beacon equipment. That may not even actually be owned by the DOT. It might be owned by a private company that the DOT has leased or paid for use to do the pedestrian crossings while they are doing the construction. So our staff were a little concerned about taking that piece of equipment because it's not the same one that we use, so we don't have any replacement equipment or really the capacity to fix it or repair it if something were to go wrong. There were some concerns about the site distance. There were some concerns about neither of them believe or are not sure that crosswalk is actually ADA accessible the way it's designed. There were a couple other issues, and so we kind of want to do our like normal review, that the way that we would do for any kind of intersection, and make sure that we understand what the right location is, whether it's where it is, or it might be in the actual intersection, which I'm not an engineer, so I'm speculating, this is pure speculation, but that they didn't put the crosswalk in the intersection because they were doing work in the intersection, so they moved it to a location that may or may not be the best location. But so basically, we'd like to sort of do the same kind of review that we would do for looking at a kind of crosswalk at any location and make sure it basically meets the town standards before we ask the DOT, you know, to leave the equipment or to sell us the equipment or to take the equipment, but allow us to do. I think there's a few different ways that could go.
So when did you think the town would be able to do that kind of evaluation?
I don't have a date yet, but that is something I can come back with a little more detail next time. I'll give you more of an ETA on that, but I'm not sure.
Do you know, worst case scenario, that flashing beacon goes away, do you have any idea when they would do that, if in the worst case scenario?
I don't think it would be for several months because there's just no work happening for a couple months.
Agreed.
So I think we have a little bit of time in that regard. It's not just gonna, you know, we're not just gonna come into town one day and it's gonna be gone.
Yeah.
And we do, I think there's general interest in.
When Pete and I first talked about it, he said it was like, part of that was just, like it would stay to the end of the construction project, but they would need time to rewrite the contract. Because right now the contract is written that they take it out.
Okay.
So there's like an NHDOT unspecified time.
Okay.
So there is some like it would have to be before the construction period's over, that would.
Okay.
I'll get a more firm date. I think it'll be a little easier to do some of this. This is part of the benefit of bringing the RPC in. I mean, like, you know, right now, you know, Rob is, you know, gearing up for all the zoning related stuff for town meeting. Pete has been working all over the place on capital stuff. It's tough to fit in these sort of things when they're not planned out really far ahead of time. But bringing in transportation planners from the RPC is going to help that a little bit because they can do some of the work that we would do in-house. So hopefully it will allow us to move a little quicker on these things in the future. But I'll try and get a little more information. I'll have it by my next report, the sort of timeline and dates and stuff.
Thank you. Anything else, Alex?
Nope. That's it.
Select board reports.
Nothing to report?
Yeah, I don't have any.
Well, I guess February 13th is the public hearing for the town sustainability master plan. So that's actually that's a week from tomorrow, and I think it's at 7 right in this room.
7 right here.
I think I put that on my calendar.
And so, and you should. There's actually a link right on the town's homepage that you can go to and read it.
You know, for a second I thought you were going to say pond party. Remember those days when we used to have winter?
Yeah.
And
actually, I've stopped and talked to the fire department like twice, because 2 different groups of guys were out there spraying the rink, and it was like, oh, it's so cold tonight, but oh darn, tomorrow it's gonna be in the 40s.
Alice, I don't know
so-
if you know this, you may have heard about it, the town, for about a decade
At least.
or more, had a community gathering on Ockham Pond, which was really, really, really fun. Bill Young, in all of his glory, used to mastermind ice sculptures and activities and
Ice sled, like
Yeah,
ice
ice
castles
racing.
that you could slide on.
sliding.
Couch
And
races.
couch races on the pond. It was really, really, really fun. I totally enjoyed it.
Yeah.
The college would help out. Durham Dining would, have a cookout. It was really
nice.
really great.
Yeah, I've heard
But
really good things about it.
We canceled it because
So
there was
many
no winter.
years,
right?
there's no ice on.
Well, I thought for a moment you were gearing up for a very sarcastic comment of like, Alex, I know you've only been here for a little bit, but we used to have this thing here.
Started out
It's
good.
called winter.
Yeah.
I heard great things about it, but
It was really-
I've done some stuff with ice activities in other places, and always erring on the side of caution is the right thing to do.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
Nancy, report.
Aside from adding to the mourning about the ice castle, tomorrow your planning board is going to meet here in Town Hall, Tuesday, February 6th. And somebody's mentioned with Rob's work on zoning amendments is going to be most of the agenda. We welcome any and all participants.
Is that televised as well?
Yeah, you can actually zoom in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
It's
that
not
kind
Not
of.
these guys, but there's an
But you
owl.
can
The owl's
zoom
up.
in. The owl is up, yes.
Jenny.
Yeah, just more on the ice slides and Bill Young. He usually ropes in a bunch of Hanover Bike Walk people. I didn't get to do it this year, but there are ice slides now at 7 different schools, and because there's not ice, they had to arrange with some folks who know how to cut ice out of a pond to go and cut slabs of ice to make these like ice slides, and it was definitely paying off because at the Ford Sayre race, people were using the race school parking lot, and all the skiers as they came back were like, I got to go to the ice slide first, and people from other towns were going on
Nice.
too. It was just like a little slide, but yeah, big success.
Wonderful.
Do you do any bike riding on the ice? I've seen people do that where they'll get like some sort of special tires, or you can like ride on.
Spikes in your
Yeah,
tires.
yeah. Is that a thing at all?
Well, there's not a lot of pond ice right now, although Lake Maury's open.
Oh, really?
And
It is?
there's been skating for 4 days.
And yeah, Muskoma's open too.
The Muskoma's open, so but there's no snow on the ice, so my like if I'm gonna go skating, it's like okay, they've plowed it, so I know if a truck goes on it, I can go on it. But they have highlighted like circled areas where the ice is 1 to 2 inches in yellow, and the others 5 to 7 inches in blue. So lots of people were out yesterday.
Carrie.
So 2 CIPC meetings since we last met on the 26th of January and then on February 1st. Work continues. At the last meeting, we were looking at a list of as much as $2.7 million, $2.8 million of potential capital items. One of which was Hell Library, and for about $433,000. Nancy was kind enough to come as a member of the public, so those discussions continue, and we're still doing our work. And I think there are something like 14 days left for us to write our report and submit it to the select board. So there's a lot of work going on there. Did you want to add to that on the CNPC?
Oh, it's like a very quick process, because we just got information in, and for a lot of the projects it's incomplete information. So we are doing our best to organize them by what we understand to be the urgency, given what we can say when we know about a project. So, yeah. More questions than answers.
Yes, and the whole funding mechanism of what comes out of the CRFs and what goes into the CRFs has yet to be plotted out, and of course that's what drives the tax impact So there's a lot of financial stuff that needs to happen in terms, once the CIPC has its list of kind of approved items, it needs to get plotted out by year as well. So there's a lot still up in the air. Finance Committee met on January 25th. I think I mentioned the memo. It was very helpful to have Ellen and Alex there. Thank you, Alex and Ellen, for coming. That was important. Fair amount of discussion about the fiscal year 22 audit findings. I think I forwarded that along to all of you guys. Did you all saw that? So there is concern that we really take action with respect to the adverse findings of the audit. It's not just a theoretical exercise, because 22, 23, and 24 will all probably have
The same stuff.
audits that will have material findings, adverse findings. That could very well impact our cost of capital. I mean, you could see a higher interest rate, and we're sitting here at a time where we're looking at millions of dollars of expenditures, and that could cost us millions of dollars of interest if the interest rate goes up. So it's not just, it's not good to have material adverse findings in an audit in and of itself, but it also may cost Hanover a lot of money.
So are there specific things, I mean, I did read through that, and there were recommendations on what we should be doing differently. We're not quite at the end of FY24. So, are we? No, we're halfway through, right?
It would be the end of June.
Yeah.
So, but capital asset audit is not likely to happen before the end of June, I don't believe. So I don't think we'll be able to address all of the adverse findings.
But if we show a few little incremental improvements in the next 5 months,
Can't hurt.
for all of us, it can't hurt, right? I mean,
I don't know if it'll buy us a clean audit.
right. But I mean, now that we have clarity in what we should be doing, did the finance committee encourage or recommend that we can do what the auditors said, recommended that we do?
Of course.
Okay, so that was transmitted to
Yes.
Alex and Ellen, right?
Yes.
Is what you're saying, and you guys are.
But it's probably important.
It's not that simple.
It's probably important that this body, that the select board, also reach out to the auditors, that we show that we are focused on this, that this is not just something. I mean, it's very easy for your eyes to glaze over. Oh, it's an audit. Well, it's like, first of all, it sounds very technical, and secondly, it's usually, well, that's not my job. So it's like, I'm not an accountant or whatever it is, but it's important for this body to stand and probably meet with the auditors to show that we are committed to this process. I think that will buy us goodwill, and also we should provide whatever resources we can to address this. And Ellen talked about working with, I think she's identified several consultants that can help us in this process. It's important that effort go forward and be funded, because I really do think it will save us substantial money down the road.
So is this something we should be scheduling in April?
Meeting with the auditors, I think we should have an update on it every meeting, and yes, we should probably, I'm not sure what the right timing is, but we should check with Alan and Alex. You should weigh in on this. When does that make sense to do? But we want to show progress. So.
Yeah, I don't have a date yet, and I think Ellen and I are really focused on getting the budget done right now for a week or two, and then I think we'll come back to ironing out some more detailed next steps for the audit.
So April sounds good, seems like.
Potentially, yeah.
And I don't know if the capital asset audit can tie into the town facility analysis or not, but that's something I know maybe a little different, but
yeah,
but maybe
they're related certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Thank you, everybody. There has been a request for a non-public session to discuss items pursuant to RSA 91:1:3, Roman numeral 2, A, B, D, E, and L.
Whitcomb, yes.
Gracias, yes.
Carter, yes. Chamberlain, yes.
Got it, yes.
Thank you, everyone. We are a non